Hey guys, and welcome back to Madaboutskin. In today's video, I'm talking Purito. Now, Purito has to be one of the most popular, hyped, and talked about Korean skincare brands, certainly here in the West. I've used so many of their products throughout my own skincare journey. And whilst they went through a little bit of a difficult or torrid time around 2 years ago, relating to two of their popular SPF products failing their independent testing, they are now back, fighting stronger than ever with a new reformulated SPF and a whole suite of new products that are getting a lot of positive attention and praise online. I was a huge advocate for giving Purito a second chance after that failed sunscreen saga, saying we should judge brands by the response to these scandals rather than the scandals themselves. However, in the past couple of weeks, I've been made aware of a few things relating to Purito that made me want to take a pause from the brand. In truth, I'm done with Purito and I won't be repurchasing any of their products or using them in my skincare routine, and this is what I really want to cover for my reasons why in today's video. So sit back, relax, and let's talk all things Purito. Now, before we get into this video, I like to issue the usual caveat to say these are just my thoughts, feelings, and opinions that I wanted to sit down and share with you guys. I would of course love to know what your thoughts and feelings are on anything mentioned in today's video, so please let me know in the comments section below. Whilst you're down there, if you could give this video a big thumbs up and a like, honestly, it supports me and the channel so much, and I would love you forever. I don't normally request that people share the videos, the content that I create here on YouTube, but I really think this is a message that needs to get out there, because I think the sooner that brands learn that the deceptive ways that they behave do impact customer behaviour and they'll get called out for it in the end, I think the better for all of us, the consumer. I love transparency, and I think the way that Purito have acted in this case, which I'm going to come on to later in the video, is so far removed from what we should expect from the brands that we purchase our skincare from. I think we should get that message out there, which is why I'd love it if you did share this video or just let people know of what's going on. Now, before we delve into it, I kind of want to do a bit of a recap of how we got here. So if we look back to like 2 years ago, Purito's failed sunscreens were like what kickstarted the whole Korean SPF saga. So Purito had two sunscreens, the Comfy Water Sunblock and the Centella Unscented Green Level Sunscreen. Both of these were advertised by the brand as being an SPF of 50 plus, but subject to independent verification and testing, showed that they actually were delivering an SPF value of between 19 and 28, far below what the brand were actually claiming. On the back of that, Purito said, okay, we had no idea this was the case, we're really sorry, we're going to issue full refunds to anyone that's purchased from us to make sure that nobody has to feel they need to use this product. They can get their money back and then invest it in other sunscreens. They removed them all from sale and said, we'll be working on, in the background, what went wrong with these products, how we got here, and then when the time's right, we'll launch another fully verified and independently tested sunscreen to the market. So far, so good, and honestly, I was on board with this, and I always said Purito deserved a second chance because of the way they reacted to this scandal, putting the consumer first, doing all the right things to make sure that no one was out of pocket and that we could really trust what they had to say going down the line. I was always been a huge advocate of second chances because, like people, brands do screw up in life. You know, the number of times that I've asked for second chances from people, I've been so grateful when they've been granted. I think we should always afford that to brands, and this is why I had no issue continuing to purchase from the brand themselves, including looking really forward to their newly launched reformulated sunscreen. That reformulated sunscreen, which was badged as the Purito Daily Go-To sunscreen, was offering an SPF of 50 plus like the originals, but this time actually delivering it. I think it got mixed reviews when it launched 2 months ago. Some people absolutely loved the finish on the skin. I personally found it was a bit too thick for my skin and it left too dewy a finish. It certainly wasn't a like-for-like match for the textures and the feel on the skin of the original failed Purito sunscreens. Maybe we shouldn't have actually expected that, because unlike these actually had enough UV filters in them to deliver that SPF of 50 plus. And with this, they also released some independent third-party testing, both from the US and from Korea, verifying the validity of that SPF 50 plus claim. So far, so good. And whilst that sunscreen didn't work personally for me, I was really excited that other people got to try it and absolutely loved it. Since then, some things have come to light, which has shown a whole new light on Purito and really made me take a pause from the brand, and that's what I really want to share with you in this section of the video. So all this content was made available by Odile Monod, who's a fantastic content creator here on YouTube. I'm going to leave a link to her channel below, as I will to her Instagram, Twitter, and other social media handles, because she's absolutely fantastic. I adore her content. She lives in Korea and really gives a Korean perspective to the cosmetics and the beauty industry, which I love. Her videos are so well thought through, and I really wanted to applaud her for bringing this to our attention. Now, because of some of the laws, particularly around company defamation over in Korea, she wasn't able to speak particularly freely about this. She mentioned all of this, but couldn't actually name the brands. It was pretty clear. In fact, it was crystal clear the brand that she was referencing was Purito. However, because that couldn't be called out explicitly in these, which is why I decided to film this video today, definitely wouldn't be here and wouldn't be able to share this without her fantastic content. So, do me a huge favour and go over to her videos and her socials, check them out and give them a like, because it's very, very much deserved. So let's now talk about why I'm done with Purito. What actually materially changed and what's this information? Well, I think the biggest and most striking thing is the messaging and the explanation they gave for the original SPF failing and what we now know. So back 2 years ago, when the SPF was failed, Purito said they did a bit of investigating to how that actually happened, how there could be such a big discrepancy between what's on the bottle of a product and the SPF protection it's actually giving. They said that the manufacturer that made the product for them said, yep, this is SPF 50 plus. They took their word for it, slapped it on the bottle and sold it to the consumer. They admitted that they should have done a little independent testing, maybe a bit of research themselves, but they trusted what the manufacturer was saying. They were misled, which is how they ended up advertising a product that wasn't delivering the SPF value that was stated. I bought into this and thought, you know what, this is an easy mistake. This is something that could have happened. I can see how this was led to it, and they promised down the line to do third-party independent testing on any future launches of sunscreens. I thought this is a really great example of finding out what the problem is, learning from it, and putting things in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. In truth, this was what was the spiel that was given to us, the Western consumer. They actually gave a very different story to the Korean authorities and the Korean market. Because that was in Korean, and let's be honest, we're not all proficient in Korean, we didn't really get to find that out. And I think Purito, which is the bigger brand in the West than it is in Korea, was hoping that they could just, push this under the carpet and no one would notice. What they actually told the Korean authorities and the Korean consumer was that they originally had paid the manufacturer to create an SPF of 50 plus with a sunscreen for them that they could then market, which the manufacturer did. A little bit down the line, they then said, we want this to be more cosmetically elegant. We want this product to have a more lightweight finish to it. We want a lotion rather than a cream. Can you create that? The manufacturer said, yep, no problem. Here it is, and deliver the product. They then said, it's close enough to what the original was. We'll just slap the SPF 50 plus on there and continue to sell it. Now, this is very different for one key reason. Anyone with a brain cell, you don't actually need to be a cosmetic formulator, a master's degree in science to realize that if you materially change the formulation of a product, to change it from a cream to a lotion, it's going to have a different SPF rating, and you're going to need to test that and see what it is before you advertise it to the consumer. So the fact that originally they were saying to us, the Western consumer, it was that we were deceived, we were misled by the manufacturer, to now saying, well, actually, we gave them clear instructions to change and tinker with the product dramatically, to then think, this isn't really worth retesting, we'll just call it SPF 50 plus and sell it. That is very different. And the fact that they were so lacking in transparency in telling us that that was the case means, for me, I'm done. Everyone deserves a second chance in life, and I was willing to believe that and give them that second chance. This will be a third chance, and I think, honestly, now they've just blown it. Had they been honest with us, the Western consumer, and given us that same press release that they gave to the Korean authorities and the Korean consumer, I think, again, I would have probably looked the other way and said, you know what, it's not great business practice, it doesn't really make sense, but you know what, as long as it's learned from, that's another thing. The fact they continued to deceive us, the Western consumer, and to cover their own tracks just feels so dirty, so shady, and so grotty that I just never want to buy from this brand again. It's also really shady to the manufacturer themselves, who, were following instructions and doing what their client asked them to do. The manufacturers themselves are coming for a lot of sometimes justified criticism when it comes to the Korean SPF scandal. But when they're just given instructions to create a product that then Purito choose to market and advertise in their own way, that just isn't right. And so this just leaves a really bitter and sour taste in the mouth. Secondly, they've decided on their new sunscreen to not register it in Korea. Now, this might surprise a lot of people as they're a Korean skincare brand. However, under Korean laws and legislation, you only need to register your product and submit it to the required testing under Korean law if you plan to sell it in Korea itself. If you plan to just manufacture it, create it, and make it in Korea, and then ship it to the four corners of the world without it ever actually being sold to a Korean consumer, you don't need to go through that process. Purito decided, we're not going to sell in Korea, so actually we're going to register it in Hong Kong, which has very different and much less stringent cosmetic regulations than Korea itself, so we don't actually need to register it with the Korean authorities. Now, this is problematic for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it seems a bit odd that a Korean brand that sells into Korea all the rest of their products chooses not to sell their sunscreen, which is one of their best-selling products, into their own home market. And why wouldn't they register it there? It just makes sense to register it there. So you then dig a little bit deeper. Obviously, Korea has tightened up their regulations and their rules around sunscreens since the Korean Sunscreen scandal, which is great because that's designed to protect us, the consumer. Clearly, Purito took a look at that and thought, no, this isn't for us. Let's register in another jurisdiction that maybe doesn't have the same rigid enforcement of these. They're then free to sell to the four corners of the world, providing it's not sold into Korea itself. Here in Europe, the European Union does actually have a registration system where you need to submit the ingredients list to your registration of your product to make sure before you can actually sell it into the European Union. Now, a lot of people might think this provides some safeguards against that. In truth, it actually doesn't, because whilst you have to submit an ingredients list, which the European Union will then cross-check against dangerous and prohibited ingredients to make sure there's no nasties in the product before it's sold to the European consumer, that's all it needs to do. It doesn't need to go through any more rigorous testing or pre-clearance other than that ingredients tick list and check against the prohibited ingredients list. So for all that they say, you know, we want to be fully transparent, and they've definitely released their testing, which I applaud them for, there's a real reason, and it sticks in the back of my mind, why they've decided not to register the product itself in Korea. It just leaves me feeling that if you've been called out for selling a substandard product in the first place, why wouldn't you want to put it through every single last bit of testing and pre-clearance to make sure everything is A+ fantastic before you then sell it to the consumer? This, again, just seems very suspicious, and on top of the duplicity when it came to their own explanation for how they got there in the first place, leaves me feeling entirely turned off and cold towards Purito as a brand. I don't want anyone that's using the Purito sunscreen to think for 1 second that it hasn't passed its SPF validity testing. They were very clear and transparent with Purito and provided the test results for their new Purito Daily Go-To sunscreen. So if you have it, it's absolutely fine to use. It is a certified SPF of 50+ from 2 labs, one in Korea and one in the United States. Those results are available on the Purito Instagram account. I will leave below if you do want to check it out. So I want to clear that myth up. Whilst I'm choosing not to purchase from Purito again in the future, it's not because another one of their sunscreens has failed. That isn't the case, and it's absolutely fine to use. I just feel that the way that they've gone about this, the duplicity and the covert way that they tried to cover up what had actually happened, coupled with the fact that they suspiciously not registered their sunscreen in their own territory, which again just leaves a lot of things, open questions in my mind. It makes me really not want to trust or reach for the brand time and time again. I think trust is something that's really hard to earn from us, the consumer, but really quick to lose. And in this case, Purito have lost all trust from me, and I won't be promoting them on this channel again or using their products in my skincare routine. I absolutely hate waste, so any Purito products I have open, I will continue to use because there's no issues surrounding their safety. It's just the ethos and the brand itself, which is the reason I've decided not to purchase from them. I would love to know what your thoughts, feelings and opinions on this are, so sound off in the comment section below. Do you think this is something that you just assume that all brands are doing? No brands are actually transparent and open with us as a consumer, so you might as well just buy from the ones where you like their products, such as Purito? Or is this, like me, turned you completely off the brand and you'll no longer be supporting and buying from them? Promise me that you'll check out Adil's website as well as her Twitter handle, her Instagram and her YouTube channel, because she's an absolutely fantastic content creator, and it's thanks to her that we actually know now the difference between what was said to the Korean authorities in the Korean market and what was said to the rest of us in the West. Without this, I think we'd still be a little bit in the dark, and obviously the more we know about brands and products, the more informed we can be as consumers. I'd love to know your thoughts, feelings and opinions, so sound off in the comment section below. And wherever you are in the world, guys, stay safe, stay well and love your skin. Take care. Bye.